Hi everybody, and it's Invictus Elite Tuition, and today we're going to be talking about significant figures and decimal places, which are just methods of rounding things up, and I will show you that method, and you'll also get a chance to practice your questions as well. So, decimal places, significant figures. I'm going to use this number to help me explain it, but there's two really important things I just want to highlight. Firstly, decimal places only round up numbers. We only do the rounding process to the right of the decimal place, whereas the significant figures we can round anywhere. Let's give an example of that. I'm going to round this number up with decimal places, and this is what happens. And we don't need to know how to do that right yet. I'm going to show you that in a second. But when I get to this number, 1,837, I can go no further. But with significant figures, although I can round to the same number, I can then continue to round up the whole number as well. That's the big difference between significant figures and decimal places. But really importantly, the rounding, the technique is the same. It's only where I do the rounding is the important bit for these two processes. So here's my test number again. And the first thing we're going to look at is decimal places. Now, all I have to know is that for the decimal place, I always go from the decimal place. And if I wanted to round up in between the 4 and 8, so the 8 was going to round up the 4, then this would be the first gap, one removed from the decimal place. But that's such a big mouthful, so I don't say that. We just say one decimal place, one DP. That's one jump away from the decimal place itself. And in just the same way as I've got one decimal place, I could have two decimal places. And if this number was bigger, I could have 3 decimal places or 4. I can go on and on and on. Significant figures, though, are slightly different. And one of the rules, and there are two, is that I count from the left to the right. What that means is then that I'm going to start to the left, working through the number. I'll show you what that means in a second. But also I ignore the first zeros, and again we'll look at that as well. So if I was going to be counting significant figures, I get to the 1, and that is my first significant figure because it is above 0. And then I'd count 1 in, and that would be the first significant figure. If I counted 2 in, that would be the second significant figure, and 3, on and on and on. All right, here's my number, and this number I'm going to round to 2 decimal places, and I'm going to round it to 2 significant figures, and we'll see what the differences are going to be. So, firstly with the decimal place, I go from the decimal place, I go back once and twice, and this is the position that I'm going to round my 2 decimal places. So the 9 is going to affect the 3, and you probably know what that rounding is. With the significant figures, I come from the left and I ignore zeros. Well, the first number I get to is 2. That's more than 0, so I go back 1, 2, and that's the second significant figure. It's between the 3 and the 7. Let's see what that looks like. So for decimal places, the 9 would round up the 3 to 4, and there's the number I would get. And for significant figures, the 7 would round up the 3, and that would become 4. But it's not 24, it's going to be 2,400, because the numbers keep their place value. Okay, let's have a look at a number now which has got lots of zeros in it, and specifically we're going to look at significant figures. And we're going to round to 2 significant figures. First thing though is I'm going to count from the left. This is where this rule of ignore the first zeros come in. So I'm going to count past the first 0, the second 0 and third 0 until I get to the 6. That is my first significant figure, and I'm going to count back 1 and 2, and so therefore the 9 is going to round up or down, round up though, the 3, and that's going to be my rounding point. So I'm going to get the answer 0.0064. Now you know everything. It's your turn. So pause the video, here are two numbers and I want you to round these to two significant figures. And we'll come back and look at what your answer is in a second. Okay, so welcome back. Let's have a look firstly at rounding significant figures. I come from the left and I ignore zeros. 1 is my first significant figure. There's 1, there's 2. So that's the second significant figure. So the 6 is going to round up, in this case the 8. I'm going to get the answer 1,900. For the second one, I come from the left, but I ignore those first two zeros because they're not significant. I get to the 2 and I begin to count. I go back 1. Now, I've put this 0 in between the 2 and the 7 on purpose. Because I have started to count significant figures, I continue counting, and there is my second significant figure. So 7 will round up that 0 to 1. And so those are those two numbers round to two significant figures. Let's have a look at decimal places. So again, your turn, your go. I want you to round these two numbers to one decimal place. Pause the video. Okay, welcome back. And so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to, referencing the decimal place, we're going to come back one decimal place. There it is there. That means the 7 will round the 6 up and we'll get 19.7. For the next number, from the decimal place, because I'm rounding to one decimal place, go back. There's the one decimal place. The 5 will round up the 3 and I'm going to get 0.4. And that, everybody, is it. I hope that's been useful. Like and subscribe if you've enjoyed the video. If you subscribe, then you get access to all of the videos as they come out. And I'm also going to leave some videos that might also be helpful as links in this video for your maths journey.